Iran's power plants and bridges are in big trouble. Listen to this.
Morning, guys. That's right. This is significant escalation. The targeting of roads, bridges, and bases around the port city of Bandar Abbas is significant because it cuts off Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps supply routes, essentially isolating them. Bandar Abbas is key to controlling the Strait of Hormuz, and the U.S. has maintained their military action is aimed at degrading Iran's ability to attack commercial ships traveling through that critical waterway.
Yeah, they shouldn't be doing that.
Well, look at how bad they are behaving. It just proves the president's initial point for launching Operation Epic Fury in the first place.
Right.
Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon.
Nope.
After Operation Epic Fury, the conclusion of it, we did move forward into a diplomatic phase, if you will. But unfortunately, Iran has since violated that. They have expressed they still want to make a deal to the president.
Sure.
We're talking to them. But again, the president is not going to allow them to fire on ships in the Strait without paying a consequence for that.
Yeah, you can't do that, man.
So in response to these U.S. strikes, Iran launched missiles and drones targeting Qatar, Bahrain, and Jordan. It also damaged a power and water desalination plant in Kuwait, something crucial in the small desert nation. Iran state media is also reporting that Iran's energy minister is urging people to reduce their electricity consumption after attacks damaged energy infrastructure in and around Bandar Abbas. And remember, the president had warned earlier this week of strikes on Iran's bridges and power plants if it did not return to the negotiating table.
So they're out there saying that they want to make some sort of a deal, but they have kept zero deals that they've ever made. They say they want to make a deal, and then they break that deal. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter how good it is, and now the president is doing what he said he was going to do, and here's why.
And the war planners here at the White House are trying something different. They started bombing overnight roads and bridges around Bandar Abbas. We have a map that we can put up. The U.S. is trying to take out these bridges and roads, hoping to isolate the IRGC so they cannot resupply their people near Bandar Abbas, which is the key to controlling the Strait of Hormuz. We have a different map of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. This one is a pinch point of the Red Sea, and the Iranians are trying to get one of their proxies, the Houthis, to cut that one off. And experts are saying even a few small attacks there could be severely disruptive to.
When Trump says Iran over here cannot have a devastating nuclear capability, and then you hear that they're trying to do things over here far away from where they're at, they're not being defensive, they're being aggressive, they're being hostile, they're trying to launch attacks all over the place. But look at the effect this whole operation regarding bridges and power plants is having on the regime's ability to do anything and make money. You have oil tankers here backed up because they can't get across a bridge that is no longer there.
The reason, and this is important for the American people to understand, the reason for the recent strikes over the course of the last several days is because Iran violated the Memorandum of Understanding that we struck with them. Specifically, in the Memorandum of Understanding that they signed, they were not to fire on commercial vessels moving through the Strait of Hormuz. And unfortunately, they have made the tragic decision for them to do that. And President Trump is not going to sit by and allow these acts of terrorism to take place in the Strait without ensuring Iran pays consequences for that, and that's what we are witnessing right now.
So she's saying this is the punishment for violating the MOU. You want to tell us about this map,
they can't
Brian?
do that.
So here's the Bandar Abbas area where they're launching a lot of their drones and rockets from. So we said, okay, we know exactly where it's coming from. We've been watching. We got eyes in the sky.
And one thing that people forget is during all of this negotiation, during the ceasefire, this area that's on the map right here, the U.S. military was watching it. Eyes in the sky, daytime, nighttime, satellite imagery, planes, drones, mass surveillance. We can see the trucks coming in and out of this place. And for some reason, this regime thinks this is a capability that they can use to threaten the world economy while their military is isolated and cut off. Watch.
Been taking that out, blowing that up, and they have not shot at one ship in 3 days now. Now, the question is, can we get the merchant ships to go through knowing they got insurance? Because right now there's been 13 on Wednesday. I didn't see the numbers on Thursday, but we got to get that number up to 50, 25 tankers at least, and then various other fertilizer and natural gas, whatever it takes. But we got to get that number up at least 25 to 50.
It'll happen.
For the price of oil to go back down, because now it's about, they say gas right now is $3.85. And a barrel of oil is $84. We need it around 70.
Well, we have hit 2,000 targets in the last few days along Iran's state-run electrical grid. That's putting a strain on the country's power grid. In addition, we have also expanded our airstrike campaign by increasingly hitting these bridges.
Now, the reason that President Trump waited so long to even get to this point is because everybody was hoping this wouldn't have to happen. But if you have a regime that wants to threaten the world economy, they're not going to agree to the memorandum of understanding that says they weren't going to go after innocent ships in the Strait of Hormuz. What are you supposed to do? What is the responsible thing for the world to do in the face of this? Is it to just let it happen? I don't think so. And neither does the vice president. Listen.
We're also pragmatists. You've got the crazy people, and you've got the pragmatists. Okay. So when we struck this MOU, and really what the MOU says, and it was misrepresented more than almost anything that I've ever worked on in public life. What it says is Iran is going to open the Strait of Hormuz, the violence is going to stop, and then we're going to negotiate to see if we can come to a broader deal on the long-term nuclear issue. That's what we wanted. And what the Iranians wanted, of course, was long-term economic and sanctions relief.
Yeah.
Now, here's the problem with where we are right now. And I guess my summary view, Joe, is that I, of course, can't predict the future. I don't know exactly where this is going to go. But I think fundamentally we are on the right trajectory. Yeah. It's just going to be really messy, and there's going to be a lot of stops and starts.
A lot of
so
stops
what happens?
And starts.
The first week after we signed the MOU, we get 20 million barrels a day of oil out of the Strait of Hormuz. That's what it was before the war. The price of oil comes way down. Yep. And there are elements, the hardliners in the Iranian system kind of freak out a little bit. Did we just give away our major leverage point? Screw nuclear weapons. We just gave away the so in this MOU.
You see, that's why they didn't want to stick with this whole thing, because they saw the oil going out of the strait and they said to themselves, our only strategic advantage left is to be able to threaten the world economy and manipulate the price of oil with our aggression right here in this critical choke point that some countries are still relying on to get their oil. That's changing. You've got tankers headed to Venezuela and the United States now to get that oil. So this area of the world is being made less relevant, but it's still relevant, and the price of oil is back up because the conflict is back up, and these guys just didn't want to let that happen. They didn't want to lose any leverage, which brings us to where we are today. Listen.
And so there was this kind of freak out in their system. So they shot at a couple ships. We responded.
It's terrible.
I think that's entirely appropriate, of course. If they're going to shoot at ships, we are going to shoot at the people who are shooting at the ships, or we're going to destroy the facilities that they're using to shoot at ships. So that happens. Okay, and then the Iranians are like, oh, no, fine. You're right. We shouldn't have been shooting at ships. So then they come back to the table. And there's a few more days of negotiation. And then the phase that they're in right now is the hardliners have really, really reacted strongly to all the oil that's coming out of the Strait of Hormuz. And they've basically said, we're going to try to shut this thing down. We're scared about losing our leverage. Now, the pragmatists in their system are saying this was a mistake. Let's keep on talking.
But those aren't the guys who control the military. And the military is using bridges and power plants to fuel itself, run itself, and rearm these areas that are along the coastline where they have their last little bit of leverage. So what we're witnessing right now, the campaign with the U.S. military, is removing the last abilities that Iran has. And as you heard on Fox, they said, we've had 3 days and a whole bunch of ships have gotten out. Now, that very well may change. This is a very fluid situation. There's probably somebody who sees any amount of time where freedom of navigation is happening in international waters over there and says to themselves, this is a bad idea because this is their leverage. This is their ability to be a regime and threaten others disappearing. They don't like it. They want to do something. But even though things are messy, as the vice president just said, does that mean the U.S. has lost, as the fake news keeps telling us?
And again, do I know how this is ultimately going to shake out? Of course I don't. But what we're doing is a delicate diplomatic dance where we're using economic leverage points, we're using carrots and sticks, we're trying to talk to the pragmatists, and then, of course, when they commit acts of violence, we're responding to it. And all those things are happening simultaneously to get us on a better trajectory. Yeah. Now, that said, yes, right now there's shooting right now. Last night they shot at some ships. But with all that said, is their nuclear program still destroyed? Yes. Are the straits not necessarily fully pre-war traffic, but are we getting enough oil and gas out of the Strait of Hormuz to prevent a worldwide energy crisis?
Yeah.
Yes. And all of these things are happening in the context of the broader negotiation over the nuclear program.
We were told by the fake news and the naysayers that was impossible. We were told oil was going to go to $100, $200, $300. I mean, the predictions had no limit to how bad Trump was going to mess up the world economy, but that didn't happen. The world economy is on shaky ground, yes, but it's not imploding. Oil is higher, or was higher rather, under President Biden. Think about that for a second. Oil at $80 a barrel is lower than it was under Joe Biden before he drained the strategic reserve. So the failure of this whole operation that so many people wanted to see, which it boggles my mind why you would want a regime that wants to threaten the world economy and has that as a strategic objective, why you would want that to continue. But people wanted to see Trump fail, probably because they don't like Trump. And they'll side with just about anybody if it means Trump screws up or it means some external circumstance comes along to stop Trump for them, because that's all that they could think about for some reason. They were telling us this was going to happen. Didn't happen.
You never know where this is ultimately going to end up, but that's where we are. And then can I just say one other thing about this? Because there are people, you see Mike Pence, who's sort of a super hawk, my predecessor.
Yeah, Mike Pence.
Who say this. There are people, who are super hawkish in the American system who have attacked the deal.
Yeah.
And frankly, in some ways have tried to derail
They
the
didn't
deal.
understand what it was for.
And what I always say to those people is, what is your proposal? What is your actual argument? So just take the Strait of Hormuz, like the narrowest, but in some ways the most important part of this back and forth right now. Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway. To the extent you shut down 25% of the world's energy supply, okay? Joe, you could take $100,000 and go buy a bunch of drones on the black market and post yourself on an island in the Strait of Hormuz or near it, and you could fire drones at those ships. Okay?
Look, it's so easy.
Now, what does that mean? Some oil and gas is still going to get out because some ships and some ship captains are going to say, screw you. Now, the United States can help that, right? We can shoot down some of those drones. We can shoot down some of those missiles, and so we can facilitate the flow of traffic. But the people who are like, you cannot negotiate with the Iranians, the reason why that's fundamentally idiotic is because so long as you have some person who's willing to fire off a few cheap drones, you're going to have some ship captains who say, no, we're not willing to do this.
Right. And what people who are against this, what they want is they want a 100% guarantee that what the vice president just described can never take place, and that's impossible. So what they're saying, all of these critics of the Memorandum of Understanding, all of these critics of President Trump right now who are on the Republican side and want to see even more, they've got an impossible measuring stick. That's what they have. They're saying that until there is a 100% guarantee there will never be anything but peace in the Middle East forever, Trump has failed. Trump hasn't gone far enough. And military experts are saying that Iran's conventional military capability, their missiles, their drones, that has been set back decades. 30, 40 years are some of the estimates for how far back their military programs and their buildup has been sent. The vice president says we're never going to get to zero. Okay, so now we're at 30 years, 40 years back. What, are we going to do more damage to Iran to get them back to 45 years, to 50 years? Like, at what point is enough enough? At what point do we say, hey, look, we've got to figure something out here because we're never going to get a 100% guarantee that this area is 100% safe. But we've got to do something, because if Iran is out there firing and breaking their word, that puts the United States in a tough position.
We're executing Project Freedom. Remember, that was the plan to open the Straits of Hormuz back on May the 4th. It was a plan that, at that time, to be about 2 weeks in length. It was a very comprehensive plan, and we're executing it. We're not naming it, but that's the fact. And that plan is, one, to secure the straits, to clear the straits, and then also to protect shipping. And what you're seeing is one, the focus to take down all the means for them to interfere with shipping. Missiles, drones, fast boats, and then the things that help and enable it, command and control, sensors, radars, and the logistical infrastructure support for it. And then we're also hitting Iran's ability to retaliate against the Gulf states, U.S. bases, or Israel if they choose to do that as well. And that's ballistic missiles, launch systems, and also drone inventory and storage sites. Isolating the Straits of Hormuz was always part of the plan. So that's why you see bridges being destroyed, because we don't want them to come in and be able to reinforce logistically and begin to recover the capabilities that we're taking away from them. So nothing different about this. We just never saw Project Freedom being executed fully. Remember, it got stopped in the 36th hour. Something outrageous by Saudi Arabia, if you recall, who would not permit us to fly out of their air base and not permit us to use their airspace, and also put pressure on us to stop the operation. So this takes some time to unfold to truly get it right. And hopefully this time we'll be able to complete it and get it right. And then here's what we got to remember. For Iran, the Straits of Hormuz is a strategic asset. No matter what happens here, they will continue to want to take it back from us because it's number one. They don't have a nuclear power capability. They're not even close to developing a weapon now. This is their number one strategic asset. It gives them leverage over the Gulf states in the region, and they truly want to have an element of control here.
And that's why this conflict is still going on. That's why you have, as the vice president described, something going on between the pragmatists and those who want to wage a forever campaign. They want that leverage. This is the last piece of leverage they have. Remember, when the whole Operation Epic Fury, before that started, Iranian negotiators told U.S. negotiators that they had enough material for 11 devastating weapons, that they could make them themselves, that they had enriched enough uranium to get to that point. They thought that that was leverage. Well, that's no longer on the table for them. And now, neither is their ability to launch things into this area in any meaningful way to shut down and threaten the world economy. What do you think about that? Do you think the United States is on the right track? Do you think the vice president's right about this idea that getting to zero is impossible? I think that's a logical way to look at this. But what do you think? I'll see you in the next video.